thank you and praise you for this wonderful time of fellowship around the world. Yes, Lord, there's a lot of confusions are going on. The evil one is distorting the word, diluting the word. Lord, it's a time of confusion. But Lord, we know that you are in control. You are on the throne. Oh, Spirit of God, you are our teacher. Jesus, you have promised that when the Holy Spirit, the Comforter, will come, he will lead into all truth. Help us not to be misguided by fancy ideas and thoughts of the people, logics, and our own opinions. Help us to adhere to the word, stick to the word, to interpret every verse by the verse. Let the Bible be the interpreter of its own statements. Anoint your servant, Master, so that I can be used as a tool in your hands. I can be like a mouthpiece in your hand to present what you wanted to present to our group this evening. We give you all glory, all honor and power. With thanksgiving, in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, some updates. We know that Russian war, the invasion on Ukraine. I don't know whether you are following the news or not. I don't know. So I have some updates just to bring a little bit going back to this war. Why actually the Russia and Ukraine are at the loggerheads? Why Russia had to invade this Ukraine? They have hostile these both countries since 2014. The time of Ukrainian revolution, which was followed by Russian annexation of Crimea, that is an island in Ukraine. And then Russia, with the pretext of declaring Donetsk and Luhansk as the People's Republic, independent countries. Russia invaded Ukraine, and they wanted to capture all the southeastern part of Ukraine, because almost half of those things, or maybe 2/3, are Russian-speaking territories. That's another advantage for Putin. In spite of so much is happening, Putin is still not going back. And I have some United Nations High Commissioners for Human Rights survey reports, and there are some reports from United Nations. So from 4 a.m. of 24th February 2022, when the Russian Federation armed attack against Ukraine started, to 24 hours midnight of 2nd April 22 local time, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights recorded 3,455 civilian casualties. And since the war began, Russia lost around 15,300 troops, 509 tanks, and other equipment, says Ukrainian General Staff. Nearly 1 month into the war in Ukraine, the human and material loss of the Russian army continued to soar. The Ukrainian military claimed on Tuesday more than 2,000 armored vehicles were destroyed. It's a great, though Russia is so powerful in this conflict, it is really a shameful thing for such a great country. The little country, and with the little limited forces, Ukraine is doing its best. And NATO estimates that Russia has lost 7,000 to 15,000 soldiers. And Russia has lost between 21,000 to 45,000 troops in 4 weeks of conflict. More than 11 million people are believed to have fled their homes in Ukraine since conflict began, according to United Nations. 11 million people fled the country. Wait. And United Nations General Assembly, Resolution ES 11/1, is resolution of 11th Emergency Special Session of the United Nations General Assembly, adopted on 2nd March 2022. It deplored Russia's invasion of Ukraine and demanded a full withdrawal of Russian forces and a reversal of its decision to recognize the self-declared People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. The resolution was sponsored by 96 countries and passed with 141 votes in favor, 5 against, and 35 absent. India absented from this voting. And there's another disgrace for Russia. 7th April 22, UN Affairs, they quote this. The UN General Assembly adopted a resolution on Thursday calling for Russia to be suspended from the Human Rights Council. From Human Rights Council, Russia was removed. 93 votes for and 24 against. Again, 58 nations were absent. Can you imagine rejection from the nations, economic and trade sanctions, crushing economic collapse? What Russia is really looking for? I know they wanted to capture the Ukraine. They wanted to install a puppet president of Russia. All these things, he wanted the pretext of safety for his country, security for his country. It has the largest military power in the world after United States. Why Putin is so much insecure, we can understand that. So now, leaving this Ukraine, it is still today's newspaper. If you, I'm reading from the Hindu newspaper, that is the Hindu, page 11, the news of the world's news. Russia tests a nuclear-capable Sermer ballistic missile. Russia said on Wednesday it had conducted the first test launched of its Sermon, intercontinental ballistic missile, a new addition to its nuclear arsenal, which President Vladimir Putin said would give Moscow's enemy something to think about. His statement, you just think about statements, what he's making. It has no analogues in the world and won't have for a long time to come. Mr. Putin said, this truly unique weapon will strengthen the combat potential of our armed forces, reliably ensure Russia's security from external threats, and provide food for thought for those who, in the heat of frenzied, aggressive rhetoric, try to threaten our country. That's Putin. And NDTV is giving the same thing like can't take a lightly. CIA wants desperate Putin poses a nuclear threat to the world. And warn West. Putin is warning the West, warning the world to think twice as Russia tests summer missile. By Western analysts, it was named Satan II. Think about it, Satan II. Highest tactical and technical characteristics capable of overcoming all modern means of anti-missile defense. So, my friend, they are preparing for the serious and more aggressive war. Leaving that now, Putin is out Israel. See, Israel, he wants to make a friendly, create a friendly atmosphere with Russia. You know why? Because right at the border of Israel, in Syria, Syria is the military base of Russia. So they wanted a security. So when President Benjamin Netanyahu was there, he went and met Putin, and a cordial relationship for some period, and he has taken a green signal to safeguard its own. I mean, Israel wants to safeguard its own threats from Iran, Hezbollah. So Russia was just victims and did not take much seriousness. But you know, later, last month, February 24, 2022, Russia does not recognize Israel's sovereignty over Golan Heights that are part of Syria. Its deputy ambassador, Dmitry Polensky, told the UN Secretary Council, which held a debate on Israel-Palestinian conflict on that day. After so many years, now that Russia is raising its voice against Israel, we are not going to recognize your sovereignty on Golan Heights. Golan Heights belongs to Syria. It belongs to Syria. And Russia condemned Israel's occupation of Golan Heights on Wednesday and said it does not recognize the sovereignty of the region. So, my friend, Israel is getting a warning from Russia. That was in the month of February. But the latest is, Israel is now having the conflict uh, there is more uh, casualty in Palestinians and the Israelites. That's Temple Mount very recently, because Temple Mount is known as the holy site for Muslims and Jew, and it's also for the Christians. So all the three festivals, like a Passover and Ramadan and Good Friday, all have come in this month. So somehow they wanted to instigate uh, Israel into the war, Palestinians. They have hidden a lot of, missiles and rockets and, all those things in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And Israel police have to invade and they have to get crashed into the mosque and disperse all of these hooligans. And that is becoming a big news now. Almost 130 people were killed and many were injured. They used the rubber bullets. All these days Russia never raised its voice. Now Russia is raising its voice very recently. Russia warns Israel it won't tolerate more civilian casualties in Gaza conflict. During the 1967 war, Israel occupied West Bank and established a military administration throughout the area except East Jerusalem, which Israel incorporated into itself, extending Israel's citizenship, law, and civil administration to the area. Presently, most of the West Bank is administered by the Israel, though 42% of it's under varying degrees of autonomous rule by Fatah-run Palestinian Authority. The Gaza Strip is currently under the control of Hamas. Hamas and Hezbollah, terrorist groups, they are instigating, causing this problem. See, it is like a blame game. They say that Israel is attacking. They are, this is a holy month. They have desecrated our temple. That is what they say. And Israel says we are defending our country, our nation, our people. So these are the things happening, my friends. And Russia wants, this is the latest, another threat to Israel. Russia wants Israel not to be imbalanced or unbalanced ahead of Zelensky's Knesset speech this Sunday. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is becoming a real hero of this situation. He's really fighting with confidence. He's really fighting with commitment. He could have ran away in the first place. America has given green signal for him to come and escape from Ukraine before the war started. But he said, no, I don't want the trip, but I want the weapons to fight. He's really a hero, and he spoke, on the video, online in United Nations and American Congress and Britain, everywhere, and he's going to speak this Sunday, Knesset, that's Israel's parliament, and he's going to speak. So he is warning Russia is warning, Putin is warning, saying that be careful, must be balanced. Because when Zelensky is going to speak, definitely speaks against Russia, and your stand makes the difference. And Putin wants Israel to be neutral, just like Russia, India is standing as a neutral. Okay, mute. How come? Okay, now it's okay. So Putin wants Israel to be a neutral, and he wants to be very careful how they take a stand uh, against this, Russia and the Ukraine war. So all these things are happening, my friend. And another striking news today is there is a lot of chaos in Israel government. Israel government in crisis after senior lawmaker quits coalition government. You know that just one vote, just extra one vote, these people have formed the government, and Benjamin Netanyahu, Likud party, lost majority, and they formed the government not even 1 year. Now it's almost in the parliament, they lost the majority. And Israel government lost its majority in Knesset on Wednesday when the coalition whip from Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's Yamina party announced she was joining the opposition. And there's a lot of things why she wants to join. There is a memo from the Ministry of the Health Department that a few days before this Passover, hospitals a few days instructing them to uphold the High Court ruling allowing people to bring leavened food into hospitals on Passover. So she said, that opposition leader, she said, her name is, what's her name? Edith Silma. She said, I could allow it to harm Israel's Jewish identity. Jewish identity is under peace. So that is the one pretext. But there is a lot of other reasons like, uprising of this Palestinians threat and unrest in Temple Mount, unable to control it, and there is a lot of things behind. So Israel government is also in the drum, and Netanyahu welcomed Silman's decision and said she proved that what interests her is the Jewish identity of Israel. But he cannot form the government anyway. So they are going for another elections. That is another big threat. And we see that how all these things are culminating towards the Ezekiel war. Ezekiel 38 from verse 1 to 6, the prophet is writing about the introduction to this war. Gog and Magog says, Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach and Tubals. And he says, behold, I am going against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you about and put hook into your jaws, and will bring out all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly attired and great company with bucklers and shield, all of them wielding swords. Persia, Ethiopia, Put with them, and all of them with shields and helmets. Goma with all its troops. Beth Togarma from the remote parts of the north with all its troops, many people with you. There's a principal alliance here. And I was just thinking about it. Are they now aligned, all these nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38 chapter? Yes, my friends, I've collected the data and I want to just present it. Iran and Russia are viewed as a strategic allies with a mutual economic and political interest, including on matters such as Iran nuclear. Russia has supported, so Iran is a strong ally of Russia. Russia has supported the administration of incumbent President Bashar al-Assad of Syria since the beginning of Syrian conflict in 2011, politically with a military aid, and since September 2015 through its mission in Syria with a direct military involvement. So today, the Syria has become the military uh, center of Russia, and Syria and Iran are strategic allies. Syria is often called Iran's closest ally. And Arab nationalism ideology and Syria's ruling Baath party notwithstanding. Following the dissolution of Soviet Union in 1991, relations between Turkey and Russia improved significantly, and two countries came to rank among each other's largest trade partners. Russia became Turkey's largest provider of energy, while many Turkish companies began to operate in Russia. So, Turkey and Russia are aligned, and Syria and Russia is aligned. Iran and Russia is aligned. Russia also regards Libya as one of its strongest allies in the Arab world and has supported the stabilization of the country following aftermath of Libyan civil war. General Colonel Gaddafi, after that there was a civil war, and Libya and Russia now have become aligned. Russia is Sudan's strongest investment partner in Europe and political ally in Europe. The Russia has repeatedly and significantly regarded Sudan as an important global ally in the Africa continent. And the remaining was Ethiopia. In 1943, Ethiopia and Soviet Union established diplomatic relations. Since then, great power competition and evolving political and economic interests have shaped the bilateral relationship between Ethiopia and Soviet Union, now Russia. My friends, what I'm trying to say is Russia and its allies, they're all set together. And Russia will never consider, though Naftali Bennett, the present Prime Minister of Russia, Israel, he met Putin. He wanted to be a mediator between Ukraine and Russia. He wanted to play that key role because Ukraine is having the majority of Jewish people. And my friends, it's a very tough time. Russia, when it has not spared its own kin and kin, like Ukraine is his own previous Soviet state, part of the state. He never spared Ukraine. How can he spare Israel? So anytime Russia may raid on Israel, because it has warned very clearly, we cannot tolerate any more, civilian deaths. So, and is strongly giving a warning that Golan Heights is no more belongs to Israel. They deny the sovereignty of Israel. So, my friends, so everything stage is set. Just any time, the prophecy has to be fulfilled. So what I wanted to say, these updates, everything is set, ready according to the prophetic time clock. When this war will break out, I don't know. Why I said I don't know? Because the church has to be raptured. After the rapture of the church, Ezekiel 38-39 war will break out. So we need not to worry about this war, the effects of war. Even don't worry about the 7-year tribulation, the wrath of God. All this horrendous Holocaust is going to take place during that 7-year period. We are gone. We are gone. Because that is the promise of God. That is the reason I believe the pre-tribulation rapture. If it is not pre-tribulation rapture, we have to see this war. We have to face the consequence. See, the whole world is facing the consequence of Ukraine and Russian war, grand scale war. And surprisingly, Israel cannot win on its own strength. The consequent 3 wars, the future 3 wars, Gog and Magog war, Armageddon war, and Revelation 20th chapter, Gog and Magog war. The words, terminology use the same, Gog and Magog, but they are different wars. Many people make confusion because of the phrase used, Gog and Magog. This Ezekiel war is a regional war, just the regional war, a Russian federation. It is a northern federation with a few countries along with it. But whereas the Gog and Magog war in Revelation 20th chapter is worldwide. It is against Satan. Satan versus God. And Armageddon war, some people also they say, some people, the Armageddon war and the Russian war are the same. No, my friend. See, it's a very clear. We have to study the characteristics of the wars and the players involved in it, and all those things we have to take consideration. Here in this Ezekiel war, Russia is the main key player, and along with the 6 nations are the allies, and that's it. They are against nation Israel. And God will come to the rescue of this Israel, and Russia will going to be defeated. Not because Israel's strength or might. Israel is a pretty strong nation today. It is not an ordinary nation today. It is, when you think about the strength of this nation, it is almost top 7th strongest nation in the world. It is the 7th strongest nation in the world. Power ranking based on the 5 attributes: country's leader, its economy, influence, its political influence, strong international alliance, and strong military. With all these things, and Israel stands 8th rank in the 10 highest nations, strongest nations. In spite of that, it cannot win the war because Bible very clearly said God will intervene. And Armageddon war, it is Christ against Antichrist. That is very clear. The characteristics, who are the key players in that? Antichrist and all the nations, kings of the nations. And Revelation 20th chapter, the war, the key player is Satan, along with all the people of the world against God. So, these 3. So what I'm trying to say, my friends, time is clicking fast. Any day, any time, Jesus will come. Unless the church is raptured, the war cannot take place. But all preparations, alliance, everything is ready. Russia somehow instigating, warning Israel. So My friends, we are at the brink of the eternity. Anytime. Let's get prepared ourselves. Not only ourselves, but let us prepare others also. The time is running out. So this is little bit of my updates. I don't know what is the time now. It is almost 8:15. Maybe I'll take another 20 minutes. Then I go into the subject because I cannot justify because it is a long pending. So let's give a little pause and then I will go into the another subject. That is, why do I believe pre-tribulation rapture? Well, let me go to the last before week when we were studying this subject, we consider all the principles